How does the film Dances with Wolves employ the aesthetic convention of the noble savage or the vanishing Indian? American Romantic artists started including the American Indian in their works in the early 1800s. It did not matter if the Native Americans were depicted as noble or savage, good or bad, as long as they aroused a strong emotional response. The initial reason for including Native Americans was to arouse the sentiment of their dying race. It not only was this plotline seductive to early Americans, it also became a staple in our country's early national literature for another reason. It helped to rationalize the genocide of Native Americans. The myth of the vanishing Indian was essentially that the fate of Native Americans was set in stone. They were to perish to make room for the progress of civilization. Not just the people, but their lands, their practices, and their overall way of life. It was necessary for the advancement of our society. To the same token, though, this necessity to eliminate their people made a lot of early Americans nostalgic for their dying way of life. The theme of the vanishing Indian is depicted in many places throughout the film Dances with Wolves. In the beginning of the film, Lieutenant Dunbar is asked why he wants to be stationed on the frontier. He responds with wanting to see the western frontier before it is gone. This references the vanishing Indian myth because the western frontier was to be the future of civilization. All things on the frontier were destined to vanish: the lands, the animals, and the people, to make way for progress. The final scene of the film also plays into the vanishing Indian myth. Right before the credits, we are shown with a long shot that gradually increases the distance between the camera and a small band of Sioux riding off on the last of their horses. There is a small paragraph that appears and reads as follows: 13 years later, their homes destroyed, their buffalo gone. The last band of free Sioux submitted to the white authority at Fort Robinson, Nebraska. The great horse culture of the plains was gone, and the American frontier was soon to pass into history. The Native Americans in this film either died defending their lands and people, or vanished from existence, as the Sioux did, to make room for progress. The style of shot used at the end of the film that showed the last of the Sioux becoming smaller and smaller also alludes to them being a small playing piece in God's greater game for the progression of white culture and its people.